Sheriff's Office. I'm here to talk to you today to provide some additional information and context into the officer-involved shooting that we had yesterday. Yesterday at 12:01 p.m., the manager of a sandwich shop located at 1355 North Edgewood Avenue called JSO's Communications Center after he and multiple co-workers and customers became concerned about a customer that was in the store buying food to go. The customer was showing obvious signs of impairment or intoxication, and they were concerned that he was in no condition to drive away from the restaurant and could cause a crash that could injure and kill either himself or someone else in his current state. He was described as having trouble getting into his truck, was reported to be leaning on other vehicles in the parking lot, was making strange sounds, and was potentially dry heaving as well between vehicles. An officer was dispatched and was en route when a second call came in from the manager to let that responding officer know that a customer had observed the same individual with a gun on his hip in the parking lot. The manager wanted the responding officer to know that this individual was armed before he encountered him in the parking lot. The officer called the manager as he traveled to the location and got the latest information on where the man was located on the restaurant property. The man had backed his truck into a parking space near the edge of the parking lot and was standing next to his truck between that and another car with his driver's side door propped open. The officer parked at the property next door to the restaurant and walked over to the man, tactically approaching him from the rear of his truck in full uniform. The officer identified himself as a police officer and attempted to talk to the man, and the man responded by reaching toward his waistband where the officer observed the handle of a firearm. When the man grabbed the handle of that firearm, the officer fired 13 rounds at him with his issued handgun. Rescue was called and responded, but they were unable to save the man, who was pronounced deceased at the scene. We conducted a number of interviews with employees of the restaurant and citizens who were there patronizing that establishment and were nearby at the time of the incident. And we've identified multiple witnesses who saw the man with the gun in his waistband before the officer arrived, and also multiple witnesses who saw the man reach for his waistband where the gun was located when the officer attempted to speak to him. I want to thank the employees of the restaurant who showed concern for the community by calling in about the intoxicated driver before he could hurt anyone on the road, and again to let our dispatch center know that the man was armed before the officer encountered him. We also appreciate all the witnesses who came forth to speak to us yesterday who were in the area, as each of their eyewitness accounts and their unique perspectives gives us a lot of context and information about exactly what took place in that parking lot. The suspect involved in the incident is identified as 44-year-old Daniel Edward Blyler. His limited criminal history includes a number of traffic violations and driver's license-related infractions, along with a 2009 drug arrest in Duval County and a 1999 arrest in Nassau County for grand theft. The firearm he was carrying was in a holster in his waistband and was a 9mm with a live round in the chamber and 11 in the magazine. You can see the firearm and the rounds that were in it there in the picture next to me. The officer involved in the incident is identified as Officer L.K. Johnson. He's been a police officer here at JSO for just under 16 years. And he's a traffic officer currently assigned to Zone 5. This is his second officer-involved shooting. He's been placed on administrative leave per our normal protocols while the incident is investigated. We're continuing our investigation with our investigative partners at the State Attorney's Office, the Medical Examiner's Office, and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement Crime Lab, where the evidence will be sent. It's an active and going on investigation, but I'm happy to answer any questions that I can for you in light of the ongoing investigation. So, with that, I'll open it up.
Was the suspect able to get the gun out of his holster before he was shot?
I don't believe so.
Any other questions?
So this started out as obviously a call for an intoxicated person, but quickly changed. And this is also the second officer-involved shooting with JSO in the past week. Just can you kind of speak to the circumstances surrounding how dangerous it is for officers to respond to any call nowadays?
Sure. Officers have to be aware that there's a lot of guns in our community, and any call that you go on, can have a firearm involved, and that certainly raises the danger level greatly for officers. So it started as a potential intoxicated driver call, which isn't something you would normally think that there would be a firearm associated with, but you just never know. But thankfully, the restaurant owner, once he got the information from the customers that saw that firearm on his hip, will call to let the officer know so he could be on guard to know that the man was armed before he encountered him. So once again, I appreciate the community helping to look out for us as we look out for them.
Was the suspect legally in possession of that handgun, given that he has an arrest record, sir?
Yes, I don't have the statute in front of me, but as far as what offenses prohibit you from being able to carry and what conviction level you have to have for those, that's all part of the statutes. I just don't have that in front of me. But all the information I do have is that the firearm was legally carried up until the point where he reached for it when he was approached by a law enforcement officer.
A few of his family members told us that he was in methadone treatment. Do we know, were there any drugs in his possession at all?
Well, obviously there were multiple individuals that saw what they believed to be clear signs of intoxication. So I don't want to speculate on that. From the witnesses that have given us testimony, we do believe he was intoxicated on something. We don't know what that is, and that's part of what the medical examiner's office will do as part of their investigation. They'll take samples to send off for toxicology, and we will have that information at some point in time. I just would hate to speculate, but it's clear that the witnesses that were there all believed he was intoxicated.
Okay, so you mentioned that Officer Johnson.
Yes.
You kind of described what happened when he got there, and he identified himself as an officer. How would you describe his reaction? Instinctive, life-saving for himself?
Well, obviously he had to make a decision in a split second there. You go from talking to someone, trying to establish a rapport, to having to pull your firearm, protect yourself in literally less than a second. So, we do train for those types of encounters and circumstances, and it appears that paid off for Officer Johnson yesterday. But it's still regrettable. It's regrettable whenever a life is taken, and it's sad.
When was the prior shooting that Officer Johnson was involved in, and was that also involved a fatality, sir?
It was in 2008, but I don't have the details of it to know if it involved a fatality or not.
Any other questions?
You said 13 shots fired. Do you know how many actually hit the suspect?
That's also part of the medical examiner's portion of this investigation. I don't want to speculate because entries and exits can come from the same round, and it's not accurate for me to try to give you a count on that.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Thank you.